My ex of 7 years dumped me, married my best friend 2 weeks later, so I took back everything he never knew was mine. 7 years. That's how long I had been with Jake. 7 years of love, of plans, of thinking he was my forever. We met in college, grew up together, made promises we thought we'd keep. I thought we were building something real, a home, a future, a life together. Until one night, out of nowhere, he sat me down on our couch with a look I didn't recognize. "I care about you, but I don't feel the same way anymore." It took me a second to process his words. My heart started pounding, my stomach twisted into knots. "What?" My voice cracked. "I feel like we've grown apart," he said, his tone so cold it didn't even sound like him. "I think it's best if we go our separate ways." My throat tightened. "Jake, where is this coming from? We just talked about moving in together. We were planning a trip." "I know," he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "And I meant all of it at the time, but I've been thinking a lot, and it's just not working anymore." I searched his face, hoping to find some hesitation, some sign that he didn't mean it. But he looked so certain. "Is there someone else?" I forced the words out, my stomach churning at the thought. "No," he said immediately, too quickly. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "This has nothing to do with anyone else. It's just us." But deep down, I knew he was lying. The days that followed were a blur of pain. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. My world felt like it had shattered overnight, and I had no idea how to function without him in it. And through it all, there was Sophie. Sophie had been my best friend since high school, my safe place, my ride or die, the person who had always been there, no matter what. She knew everything about my relationship with Jake. She was there for our first date, our first fight, the night he told me he loved me. When I called her, sobbing, she showed up at my apartment within 20 minutes. "I swear to God, I never liked him anyway," she muttered, handing me a tub of ice cream and plopping onto my couch. "He never deserved you." For the next 2 weeks, Sophie became my entire support system. She texted me every morning to check if I had eaten. She forced me to go out for coffee, even when I didn't want to. She sat with me through my breakdowns, listening to me overanalyze every detail, trying to understand where it all went wrong. "Maybe he just needs time," I whispered one night, my voice hoarse from crying. "Maybe he'll realize he made a mistake." Sophie hesitated before speaking, watching me carefully. Or maybe he already knew what he wanted, and he was just too much of a coward to admit it. Her words stung, but I nodded. She was right. She was always right. At least I still had her. Or so I thought. 2 weeks after the breakup, I finally felt strong enough to open Instagram again. I had been avoiding it, terrified of seeing Jake's name, of watching him move on while I was still picking up the pieces. But Sophie had told me, "You have to stop hiding. You're stronger than this." So I took a deep breath, unlocked my phone, and started scrolling. The first post I saw was from a mutual friend, a wedding photo. I blinked, confused. Jake was in a tuxedo, standing at the altar, holding hands with a woman in a white dress. A very familiar woman, Sophie. My stomach dropped. No. I clicked on post, my hands shaking. The caption read, "Congrats to the happy couple, love wins married life." My vision blurred. This had to be a joke, a prank, a mistake. But it wasn't. Jake and Sophie were married, not dating, not engaged, married, and it had only been 2 weeks since we broke up. The room started spinning. My breath came out in short gasps. My heart felt like it had been ripped straight out of my chest. This hadn't just happened in 2 weeks. This had been happening for months. The late-night texts Sophie used to get and brush off, the way Jake never seemed heartbroken after the breakup, the way Sophie insisted on being the one to help me move on. It all clicked. I had spent 2 weeks crying on Sophie's shoulder, telling her how much I missed Jake, while she was secretly planning a wedding with him. My best friend. The person I trusted most. The only person I thought I had left. I grabbed my phone, my hands trembling, and called Sophie, straight to voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. I switched to Jake. Same thing. They were avoiding me, and in that moment, something inside me snapped. The pain, the betrayal, the disbelief, it all hardened into something else. Something dark, something sharp, something they would regret. I didn't know how, I didn't know when, but one thing was certain. This wasn't over. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I kept staring at my phone, at that photo, Jake and Sophie standing at the altar, smiling like they hadn't just destroyed me, like I had never mattered at all. At first, my brain refused to accept it. It had to be a mistake. Maybe it was an old picture, maybe it was a joke, maybe. No, it was real. The caption, the comments, the endless flood of congratulations, it was all real. And the worst part, everyone knew. Our mutual friends, the ones I had been crying to for weeks, had been at the wedding. They had smiled, they had toasted, they had watched them say, "I do." And not a single one of them had warned me. I had been the last to know. And something about that broke me. I don't know how long I sat there staring at my screen. My heart was pounding, my hands trembling, my stomach twisting into painful knots. But I wasn't crying, not this time. Because the shock was turning into something else. A slow, creeping, all-consuming rage. At Jake, at Sophie, at every single person who had stood beside them, knowing what they had done to me. I had spent the last 2 weeks grieving, drowning in heartbreak, and the whole time they had been celebrating. I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms. I had been so stupid. The signs had been there. The late-night texts Sophie used to get. The way Jake had been so emotionally distant those last few months. The way Sophie had always defended him, telling me to be patient. They hadn't just betrayed me. They had played me. I thought back to the night Jake left me. I just need space. It's not about anyone else, lies. I thought back to all those nights Sophie had stayed over, letting me cry on her shoulder. You deserve better. He'll regret this. Lies. She hadn't been comforting me, she had been pretending. And that realization hurt more than the breakup itself. Because Jake, he was a liar, a cheater, a coward. But Sophie, she had been my best friend. She had been the one person I thought I could trust. And she had looked me in the eye over and over, knowing exactly what she was doing. I felt sick. I had trusted her. I had trusted them both. And what had they done? They had laughed behind my back. At some point, I turned my phone off. I couldn't stand to see their faces anymore. But the silence was worse. Because now, without distraction, my brain wouldn't shut up. It kept replaying everything, over and over, connecting dots I should have seen months ago. The weird tension in Sophie's voice whenever Jake's name came up. The way she used to ask me random questions about our sex life. Questions that felt too personal. The way Jake always looked just a little too comfortable around her. I had been so blind. So fucking blind. And the worst part? I had no one now. Jake was gone, Sophie was gone. And our mutual friends, they had chosen sides, and it hadn't been mine. I thought betrayal would feel like a knife to the heart. Sharp, sudden, overwhelming, but it didn't. It felt cold, like something inside me had just switched off, like I had been punched so many times in the same spot that I couldn't feel it anymore. And maybe that should have scared me, but it didn't. Because for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel weak. I didn't feel like a victim. I felt something else entirely. I felt like they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. Because they thought this was over. They thought they had won. They thought I would disappear, cry myself to sleep for the next 6 months, and fade into nothing. But they had no idea who they were dealing with. Because if they thought they could just walk away from this unscathed, they were dead fucking wrong. And for the first time since the breakup, I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I had finally figured out exactly what I needed to do next. I woke up the next morning feeling calm, not broken, not lost, just clear-headed. Because for the first time since this nightmare started, I finally saw things for what they were. Jake hadn't just betrayed me. Sophie hadn't just lied to me. No, they had stolen from me. Not just my time, not just my trust. They had built their lives using everything I had given them. And now, I was gonna take it all back. People had always assumed I was just normal. A woman from a regular background, making her own way in the world, and I let them think that because it was easier. Jake especially. I had never told him the full extent of my family's wealth. He knew my parents were comfortable, but he didn't know they were powerful. Because I wanted him to love me, not my last name. So when he struggled, I helped. Quietly. His first job interview, my father made a phone call. His student loans, paid off, anonymously. His apartment, I co-signed when his credit wasn't enough. The networking events where he met all the right people, I got him in. And the best part? Jake never even realized it. He thought he was self-made. Thought he had worked his way up on his own. But he was never anything without me. And now, he was about to find out exactly what happens when I take my support away. I didn't need to do anything drastic. No messy scandals, no revenge expose. All it took was a few phone calls. The CEO of his company, a longtime friend of my father. The senior manager who mentored him, a family connection. The industry contacts who believed in him, they trusted me, not him. And just like that, Jake was let go. No warning, no explanation. Just a sudden shift in company structure that left him without a job. I knew how he'd react. At first, he'd think it was a mistake, some misunderstanding. Then he'd get frustrated, angry. He'd start calling his contacts, the ones who used to take his calls immediately. And one by one, they wouldn't answer. He'd send emails. And one by one, they'd be left unread. Because in this world, your reputation is everything. And I had just erased his. Jake always prided himself on being independent. But the truth was, he never was. And now, without me propping him up, he was about to learn exactly how weak his foundation was. First, the apartment. I had co-signed the lease. Without me, he didn't qualify. One quick email, and his landlord revoked the lease. Jake and Sophie had 30 days to move out. Next, the credit card. Sophie had been living lavishly on a card under my name. I shut it down. Immediately. The next time she tried to swipe it, declined. Then the car. It was in my name, and I took it back. One by one, everything they thought they had was gone. I wasn't taking revenge. I was just reclaiming what was already mine. At first, Jake thought he could fix it. He told Sophie he'd get another job. He told her it was just a temporary setback. He told her they'd be fine. But then, the fights started. Because Sophie didn't sign up for this. She thought she was marrying the successful, confident, stable Jake. The one who had a career, a nice apartment, a future. Not the jobless, struggling, desperate Jake. And the more stressed he got, the more she pulled away. She stopped posting about their perfect marriage. She started spending more nights out with friends. She started wondering if she had made a mistake. And I just watched. Because I didn't need to destroy them. They were already destroying themselves. A few months passed. I had moved on. I had reclaimed my life. And then one night, Jake texted me. Just a simple message. "Hey, it's been a while. Hope you're doing okay." I stared at the screen, my heart beating steadily. He had seen me. Somewhere, somehow, he had seen the new me. The one who wasn't broken. The one who had walked away and taken everything with her. And now, he wanted to talk. Maybe he wanted closure. Maybe he wanted to apologize. Or maybe, just maybe, he was realizing what a monumental mistake he had made. I smiled, and then I blocked his number. Because Jake was officially nothing. And that was the best revenge of all. I had thought that revenge would feel louder, that the moment Jake lost everything, that Sophie walked away, that their entire world crumbled, I would feel victorious. But in the end, it wasn't about winning. It was about finally understanding what I had lost. And what I had gained. The night I blocked Jake's number for the last time, I didn't celebrate. I didn't toast to my success or laugh at his downfall. Instead, I sat in the quiet of my apartment, staring at the city lights outside my window, and realized I didn't feel anything for him anymore. Not love, not hate, not even satisfaction, just nothing. Because Jake had already stopped existing in my world long ago. And maybe that was the real revenge, not taking back my money, not watching Sophie leave him, not making sure his career burned to the ground, but realizing that I no longer needed to care. That for the first time in years, I was free. Jake and Sophie had taught me something valuable. Not about pain, not about heartbreak, but about who I never wanted to be. I never wanted to be the kind of person who took and took, believing I was entitled to someone else's sacrifice. I never wanted to build my success on deception and betrayal, thinking I could walk away without consequences. I never wanted to be like them. Because in the end, they lost everything. Not because I destroyed them, but because they had built their lives on lies. And lies always collapse under their own weight. I used to think my story with Jake and Sophie was about loss. That I had lost love, lost trust, lost time. But looking back, I hadn't lost anything. I was never meant to spend my life with Jake. Sophie was never truly my friend. And I was never meant to stay small just to make them feel big. What I lost was an illusion. And what I gained was everything. My independence, my clarity, myself. And that was worth more than any revenge could ever give me. One day, maybe years from now, Jake will still think about me. Not because he loves me, but because he'll know that I was the best thing that ever happened to him. And Sophie? She'll always wonder if she won. She'll always compare. Always feel the shadow of the person she betrayed. But me, I won't think about them at all. Because life moves forward. And I have so much more ahead of me. So no, I didn't need revenge, I just needed to let them go. And that was the greatest victory of all.